First, let's get to the question absolutely no one is asking. Why didn't Jeff post a video last week? After all, Jeff's been working on the final Pi Cluster episode and Turing Pi review, a Pi HQ camera photography series, a comparison of different USB storage options for the Pi, a new Kubernetes 101 series, and even a few other fun projects like plugging the Pi 4 into my house's electrical panel. Well, I have Crohn's disease, and it put me in the hospital last week, so I'm a little behind. And as with all hospital visits, I ended up a bit behind on my sleep, since it seems everything in a hospital room is designed to prevent patients from sleeping. Since I remember to bring my phone, I was able to capture 2 of the many things that woke me up during my short stay. It's always fun being woken up by that. Does that at least once every 30 minutes or so, usually right after I fall asleep. So, that's the way it is. You can read more about the wonderful sights and sounds you'll experience in a hospital in my post, Heaping Helpings of Hospital Humor for Healing, on my blog. I wanted to share a little bit about Crohn's disease to spread awareness of this invisible illness that, along with its close cousin ulcerative colitis, affects over 1.6 million Americans and 5 million people worldwide. You probably know someone who has an invisible illness like Crohn's disease. And speaking as someone who's had it since I was 17, it's hard to live with sometimes. I'm lucky to have a family and friends who have been entirely supportive. Not everybody gets the kind of support that I do. So I guess my first message is this. If you know someone with Crohn's, lupus, ulcerative colitis, arthritis, Lyme disease, or even mental illnesses like autism or depression, be supportive and understand that for this person, one day they may feel great, the next day terrible, but their outward appearances might not change at all. I had a number of days when I was still in school or when I worked in my office, and my outward appearance was normal, but I had major internal pain or nausea, or I just had to use the bathroom a lot. Be a friend. Ask how they're feeling and be understanding if they have to cancel plans at the last minute. It's happened to me too many times to count. Sometimes you just can't do something and you end up spending a night in the bathroom. And having friends asking why you couldn't come just makes you feel worse. Now, in addition to Crohn's, I have a permanent ostomy. My Crohn's has always been worse in parts of my large intestine, and I had a couple surgeries to take out parts of the colon. So for a time, I had what you'd call a semicolon. That was when I was programming mostly in PHP. But in 2018, the doctors had found a lot worse things and had to take out the whole thing. And since I no longer had a semicolon, I guess that's probably the reason I moved on to more Python programming in the past couple years. Get it? Because there aren't any semicolons in Python? Never mind. Now, Crohn's disease isn't all sad news. No, in fact, I wrote about the joy of Crohn's back in 2016, and I figured I'd share some of the wonderful new things you get to experience when you have Crohn's like me. One example, many people in their 50s approach their first colonoscopy with fear. But many cronies like me don't even have a colon, so we don't have to worry about a colonoscopy. Well, not anymore at least. I did have 15 colonoscopies before I was 30, but they weren't that bad. Sure, you do have to take some sadistic chemical concoction like Go Lightly, which does anything but make you go lightly. And yes, it turns your butt into Mount Vesuvius for an evening. But then after fasting for a day and emptying your bowels, you get the best 30 minutes of sleep you could ever imagine, all thanks to a wonderful milky white substance called propofol. Just try not to think of the camera being stuck up your butt during your nap. Another example. I'm sure you've heard of enemas. A lot of people seem to think that they carry a lot of health benefits for their cleansing abilities. Well, with Crohn's, I've gotten to experience all kinds of enemas. And let me tell you, they are not fun. For example, the Barium Enema. Imagine you're like this panda bear on the screen, flopping around on a metal table. Now imagine you're naked in a hospital gown and you have some old nurse holding a hose stuck up inside your butt, pumping barium into your bowels the wrong way. Then, after flopping around like a beached whale for 10 minutes, she pulls the hose out and you squeeze your cheeks like nobody's business to try to make it to a toilet before all that barium she pumped in comes gushing out. Now, to wash that horrific mental image out of your brain, here's a picture of a puppy. Now, on to another example. We Crohn's patients take a lot of different drugs, but universally, you can ask any one of us about the steroid prednisone. This steroid is not the type that builds muscle and makes you hit sports balls really hard. No, this one gives you moon face and makes you eat like a pig at a buffet. There are many memes about prednisone, and yes, they are all true. Speaking of eating, there's another universal experience all Crohn's patients have, since Crohn's is an inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD, and it's often confused with irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS. These are two totally unrelated things, but that doesn't stop everyone else from confusing one from the other. So everyone who has Crohn's gets tons of advice on diets that will cure their Crohn's. Now, I have to say, a carefully considered diet can help relieve IBD symptoms, and a good diet helps you stay healthy. But a disease like Crohn's or colitis is a chronic disease that causes inflammation, and there is currently no known cure for it, only treatments that can help when it flares up. I won't describe all the different dietary tricks I've tried that have helped with symptoms I've had over the years, but I do need to say that no diet will cure a diagnosed disease like Crohn's. I make the analogy that if there's an earthquake happening and you're a butcher in a room full of hanging knives, there's little chance of you stopping the earthquake itself from happening. But you could step outside the knife room for a better outcome. A Crohn's flare-up is kind of like the earthquake. It's gonna happen, and some medications may be able to help get it to go away, but your diet is like the decision the butcher makes. You can eat foods that are rough on your gut, like spicy foods, lots of lactose, nuts, raw veggies, and other hard-to-digest foods. That's like standing in a room full of knives during the earthquake. Or you can stick to safer foods that are easy to digest, like applesauce, bananas, processed bread, rice, cereal, rice, and soft meats. The safer diet will help your outcome, but it's not going to stop the earthquake. I'm also not going to eat someone else's poop, eat dirt from the African plains, or try some new age exercise ritual unless I can see proof based on reproducible and scientific tests that said activities will actually help with my Crohn's disease. And I know that your cousin or aunt or best friend's brother said they had Crohn's and it was cured after they started wearing a plutonium earring and eating 3 yellow Skittles every day. But I'm a programmer and a logician, and I also am someone who believes in an ordered universe created by a god, and it can be studied and understood. Therefore, I'm not going to take anecdotal experiences and mix that together with a little hope and some prayer and risk my health based on unproven treatments for Crohn's disease. As I like to say, with friends like these, who needs enemas? Anyways, I got a little off track there. I count myself extremely blessed because I have a job that's allowed me to work around the challenges Crohn's drops in my path. I've been able to stay employed through 3 surgeries and 6 hospitalizations. I have a wife who has remained by my side through thick and thin. I have 3 kids who I love like crazy, and I'm able to be there for, at least most of the time. Not everyone who has Crohn's disease is so lucky. And those of us who are on drugs that turn off our immune systems, like this Imuran I'm taking, have to be extra careful right now to avoid getting sick. And we appreciate it when we see our family and friends being responsible, socially distancing and wearing masks in public. I want to take my family back to the zoo and to other fun places, but so far every time we venture out, we've seen too many people in public not following the basic guidelines to slow the spread of this disease, and so we have to stay sheltered in place. I'm lucky that this last hospitalization wasn't the result of COVID, but I'm worried. I've had to go to the hospital at least once a year for the past 5 years, and I wound up in the ICU 3 of those times. If my hospital's ICU gets full to the point where I couldn't get basic services in a timely fashion, I could die. I've always had that worry, but with the amount of people I see not following basic guidelines to slow the spread of COVID, I'm more worried than ever that I may end up in the ICU at even higher risk of dying, and that's a really scary thought. I provide for my family, and I can't imagine them not having me as a husband and father. And I'd hate to stop making these videos to share with you. We can all slow the spread of COVID and make sure people with chronic illnesses don't have to worry as much. And wow, sorry, this turned a little dark. I promise I'll be back to my regularly scheduled pie and tech videos soon. I just wanted to share a little bit about my personal life to help anyone else who might suffer from similar problems. Know that you're not suffering alone. I've met so many people with Crohn's and colitis, and people like me who had major surgeries and now have ostomies, and there's never any need to suffer alone. Reach out if you need someone to talk to, especially now, since you might not be able to talk to the people that you normally can talk to or visit at local support groups. And go check out the links to my Crohn's-related blog posts in the description below. Hopefully you'll find some of my sarcastic scatological humor lightens your day. Wear your mask, and until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.